Alina's throat tightened as the Galactic Council's chief arbiter, Zextoril, unfurled his ceremonial robe, revealing the shimmering scales beneath. His 4 tentacle-like appendages turned a deep, unmistakable purple, the color of judgment among the Xelarian species. "Silence for the verdict," commanded a metallic voice from overhead translation systems. The vast chamber, carved from a single asteroid and inlaid with technologies from 200 species, fell into uneasy quiet. Thousands of representatives from across the galaxy fixed their eyes, sensory organs, or perceptual fields on the human delegation. 7 people standing alone at the center of the Council's judgment circle. After thorough evaluation, Zextoril's voice reverberated. The application of planet Earth to join the Galactic Council has been. He paused, his upper eye ridges furrowing. Not only denied, but Earth is hereby declared a Level 4 quarantine civilization. Murmurs erupted across the chamber. Alina felt Ambassador Chen stiffen beside her. "Level 4, Chen whispered. "That's reserved for pre-extinction threats." The Arbiter raised a tentacle, silencing the room. "Our comprehensive analysis has identified humanity as dangerously unpredictable, evolutionarily flawed, and presenting fundamental incompatibilities with galactic harmony." Holoprojections materialized around the chamber, displaying Earth's military conflicts, environmental mismanagement, and social upheavals, each image carefully selected to support the Council's conclusion. Humanity exhibits aggressive territorial expansion, irrational decision-making prioritizing emotion over logic, and biological limitations that would introduce instability to our 10,000-year peace. Alina stepped forward. "We request the right of appeal as guaranteed by section." "There will be no appeal," interrupted Councillor Varg of the Zentari hegemony, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting as he rose. The vote was unanimous. Even your closest allies in the preliminary trading zones concurred. Alina scanned the chamber, finding the Pleiadian delegation, Earth's supposed friends, deliberately avoiding her gaze. "Effective immediately," continued the Arbiter, "all technology transfers will cease. All communication channels will be restricted. All transit to and from Earth space is prohibited. Let them remain isolated until they either evolve beyond their flaws or annihilate themselves, as is the natural course for species of their development pattern." The judgment crystal at the center of the room pulsed red, encoding the decree into the Council's immutable record. Security drones, sleek, featureless orbs, descended to escort the human delegation out. Alina felt numb as the Council chamber, humanity's dream for 2 generations, receded behind them. In the departure antechamber, automated systems began reclaiming their visitor credentials. A tall figure approached, Councillor Thrix, a junior Zentari diplomat. While his colleagues watched, he formally accepted Alina's credentials, but as their hands met, he slipped something into her palm. "They fear what they don't understand," he whispered, his voice modulator set so low only she could hear. Outside, on the observation deck overlooking the Council station, Alina watched as Earth's flag, the last to be added to the applicant wall, was removed by mechanical arms. In its place appeared the black and yellow quarantine symbol. Ambassador Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. "We followed their rules, displayed our achievements, demonstrated our willingness to adapt. What more could we have done?" Alina opened her palm to reveal a tiny data crystal. "Perhaps," she said, closing her fingers around it, "we were trying to join the wrong club." She crushed her diplomatic pin, the symbol of 7 years of her life dedicated to Council admission. A drop of blood welled where the metal pierced her skin. "They've made their judgment," she said, watching as Council ships prepared to escort their vessel back to the Sol system. "History will make its own." The Antarctic Research Complex, unofficially dubbed Prometheus Base, had been built to disappear. From orbit, thermal masking made it indistinguishable from the surrounding ice. From space, Council surveillance satellites saw nothing but another barren patch on a quarantined world. Alina's government shuttle descended through howling winds. 10 years as Earth's defense minister had left their mark. Silver threading through her once black hair, fine lines around her eyes, a ceremonial blade from the Martian colonies at her hip. "Minister, we're ready for the demonstration," said her aide as they navigated the subterranean corridors. The central chamber was vast, excavated over 6 years in absolute secrecy. Dr. Marcus Chen stood beside a device no larger than a shipping container, its surface a web of interlocking geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. "Minister Reyes." Chen nodded, his hands moving gracefully over the control interface. "Welcome to the future the Council never imagined we could achieve." Gathered scientists fell silent as Elena approached. 10 years since their verdict," she said. "Show me what evolutionary flaws have accomplished." Chen smiled. "They expected us to beg for readmission, to deteriorate without their technology. Instead, he activated the quantum pulse drive." The device hummed, then light erupted, not from conventional emitters, but seemingly from the space between molecules. A perfect sphere of energy materialized, pulsing with colors that human eyes had never evolved to properly perceive. "Impossible," whispered an observer. "The Council's physics models explicitly proved this couldn't be achieved." "The Council's models," Chen said, "assumed that technology must follow a linear progression. But humans don't think linearly." He adjusted a control, and the energy field expanded. "We leap. We make intuitive connections. Our irrational thinking let us see pathways their logical minds dismissed." Monitoring screens displayed energy output far beyond anything in Council records. Not incremental improvement, a revolutionary paradigm shift. "And the Ghost Network?" Elena asked. Chen gestured to a secondary console where Dr. Amara Silva monitored live feeds, fully operational across 23 Council systems. Silva brought up visual data captured by microscopic drones based on Earth insect biology. Council technology searches for machine signatures. Our observers are technically alive, genetically engineered insects with quantum-linked neural clusters. The displays showed Council military installations, technology repositories, even the Grand Chamber itself, all under covert surveillance by Earth. "They believe we're withering in isolation," Silva said. "Meanwhile, we see everything." Elena nodded, satisfaction evident. "And Defense Command." A holographic communication opened, showing General Dakota Frost aboard the orbital shipyard Vulcan. Behind him, construction drones swarmed around warships unlike anything in Council-designed databases. "Minister, Ghost Fleet will reach full operational strength in 60 days, Frost reported. "Our combat doctrine integration is complete. No recognizable patterns, no predictable responses. Exactly what the Council called our greatest weakness. And now our greatest strength," Elena finished. She addressed the gathered team. "The Council judged us by their standards, never considering that evolution doesn't reward perfection. It rewards adaptation." She approached a wall-sized map showing Earth's secret preparations, shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, training facilities beneath ocean floors, research stations in dimensional pockets where Council scans couldn't penetrate. "For 10 years, we've respected their quarantine while preparing for whatever comes next," Elena said. "The silent decade ends soon. Whether as saviors or conquerors remains to be seen." Dr. Chen's interface chimed an alert. "Minister, we're receiving an emergency signal. A Council vessel has breached Luna's perimeter. It appears to be damage." Elena's expression hardened. Perhaps the universe is about to present the Council with a lesson about the value of flawed allies. "Your orders, Minister." "Bring them in," she replied. Quietly, Luna quarantine station's alert klaxons blared as the damaged Council vessel limped into the containment hangar. Its once sleek hull was pockmarked with strange organic growths, iridescent purple masses that pulsed with internal light. "Maintain biosecurity protocols," Commander Santos ordered through the comms as Elena and Dr. Chen observed from behind shielded glass. "Those structures appear to be attempting to grow." Hazard teams in sealed suits approached the craft. The Council vessel's hull was unmistakably Voraxian, the elite scientific caste that typically avoided frontline conflicts. "Life signs?" Elena asked. "One survivor," Santos confirmed. "Barely stable." When the hangar's atmospheric scrubbers finally cleared enough smoke, they saw the damage wasn't from conventional weapons. The ship appeared to have been partially consumed. The extraction team cut through mangled bulkheads and retrieved the survivor, a slender Vorax with 4 eyes and translucent skin, now mottled with spreading purple veins. Medical drones whisked the alien to a sealed treatment chamber. 3 hours later, the Vorax scientist regained consciousness. His name was Keztai, Science Officer 3rd rank in the Council's Xenobiology Division. "You are humans," he whispered, voice modulator clicking with damage. "How unexpected. The hunger that walks has driven me to the very species we cast aside." Elena approached the quarantine barrier. "What happened to your vessel?" Keztai's secondary eyelids fluttered rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in Voraxian physiology. "The Devourers have returned. Ancient enemies from dark space, dormant for millennia. They consume worlds, literally consume." His appendages trembled. "We thought them extinct. A theoretical threat, at most." Dr. Chen activated a holoprojector. "Show us." Keztai linked his neural implant to the human system. The projection flickered, then stabilized, displaying footage that made several technicians step backward. Massive organic ships, if they could be called ships, attached themselves to a Council colony world. Within hours, cities were overrun by amorphous entities that absorbed everything they touched, growing larger with each consumption. The footage jumped to another system. Council battlecruisers fired energy weapons at the biological invaders, only for the Devourers to adapt after each volley, developing reflective surfaces that redirected energy attacks back at their sources. "Our weapons became useless," Keztai explained. "Each time we destroyed one, the survivors adapted. Each battle made them stronger." "Why come to Earth?" Elena asked sharply. "We're quarantined." Keztai's primary eyes focused on her. "I was part of a classified study. After initial encounters, some Council scientists theorized that human warfare might be effective against the Devourers. Because," Chen pressed, "the Devourers counter logical attack patterns. They anticipate standard tactics and evolve countermeasures. But humans," Keztai struggled to sit upright, "humans are unpredictable. Your military history is filled with illogical decisions that succeeded against superior forces, sacrificial strategies, emotional responses that defy cost-benefit analysis." The final footage showed the Zenturi homeworld, its orbital defenses, the pride of Council military technology, failed in hours as Devourer ships simply absorbed the energy weapons and adapted. The capital city vanished beneath a tide of consuming organisms. "The Council rejected our findings," Keztai said bitterly. "They dismissed human tactics as primitive, insisted our superior technology would prevail. I was attempting to reach the outer rim when my ship was attacked." Elena exchanged a glance with Chen. Her hand moved to a secure communicator. "Activate Ghost Fleet. Full deployment readiness." "Minister," Chen cautioned, "breaking quarantine will alert the Council." "The Council's judgment has cost them their worlds," Elena replied coldly. "Their fatal error wasn't just rejecting us. It was failing to understand why our flaws exist." She turned back to the dying Vorax scientist. "Tell me everything about these Devourers, and about any others the Council has cast aside." The ESS Defiance materialized at the edge of the Crimson Nebula, the quantum drive's energy signature dampened to avoid detection. Here, beyond Council jurisdiction, the debris of ancient civilizations drifted in cosmic clouds stained the color of human blood. "Transmission sent," Communications Officer Prakash reported. Using the frequencies from Keztai's data, Elena stood on the bridge, the uniform of Earth defense bearing no resemblance to the diplomatic attire she'd worn a decade ago. Now we wait. They didn't wait long. 5 vessels emerged from different vectors, each distinctly alien in design, yet sharing one common trait. None followed Council aesthetic or engineering principles. Their hailiness, Prakash said, surprise evident. All 5. Simultaneously. The holographic display activated, revealing representatives of species Elena had only seen in restricted Council archives, the forbidden races. A crystalline entity spoke first, voice resonating like fractured glass. I am Bortak of the Granites. Your message claimed knowledge of the Devourer's return. Prove it. Dr. Chen transmitted the footage from Kestei's ship. Silence fell as the 5 representatives watched Council worlds fall. The arrogant fools, hissed a swirling, vapor-like being. A NIMBY collective consciousness. They were warned. We all warned them. Another representative leaned forward. An insectoid Vex Queen, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. Why would quarantined humans seek us? What advantage do you gain? Survival. Elena answered simply. The Council rejected each of you for different reasons. They rejected us for being unpredictable, emotional, prone to illogical sacrifice, but against an enemy that adapts to logical patterns. Your flaws become strengths, finished a hulking reptilian Kravak. As do ours. Elena nodded. The Council quarantined each of you because you didn't fit their definition of acceptable galactic citizens. The Granites for your belief in creative destruction. The NIMBY for your collective consciousness. The Vex for your hive mind battle tactics. The Kravak for your regenerative capabilities they deemed unnaturally aggressive. The 5th representative, a Meridian symbiote host, spoke through its 3 mouths simultaneously. And what do you propose, human? That outcasts band together. Precisely. Elena displayed projections of Earth's developed technologies. We've spent a decade creating weapons and ships that don't follow Council doctrine. Dr. Chen's quantum drive operates on principles they declared impossible. The Vex Queen's antennae twitched with interest as human battle simulations appeared. The Granite Elder's crystalline form resonated at a higher frequency when Chen demonstrated Earth's unconventional power systems. We each possess capabilities the Council feared, Elena continued. Each brings something unpredictable to battle. Together, we could challenge the Devourers with strategies they cannot anticipate. The Kravak commander grunted. What guarantee do we have that humans won't betray us once the threat is neutralized? None. Elena answered candidly. Just as we have no guarantee you won't betray us. But the Devourers offer certainty, extinction. The NIMBY collective swirled contemplatively. The Council deserves their fate. They cast us all aside. Yet countless innocents will die, Elena countered. And after consuming Council space, the Devourers will come for our territories next. The representatives conferred among themselves. Finally, the Granite Elder's crystalline form pulsed with decision. We will form this alliance of outcasts, Bortak declared, not for the Council's sake, but for all who deserve a different judgment than the one they passed on us. Elena permitted herself a small smile. Then let's begin planning how the evolutionary flaws of 6 species will save a galaxy. The Meridian symbiote gestured to a display showing Devourer advancement. We may already be too late. The attackers have breached the Centauri sector. The Council capital will fall within months. Perfect, Elena replied, to the aliens' evident surprise. The Council's darkest hour will be the outcasts' moment of return. Centauri Prime's orbital defense platforms, once considered impregnable, disintegrated under waves of Devourer bioships. The living vessels attached themselves to metal and composite structures, secreting enzymes that broke down matter at the molecular level, absorbing materials to grow even larger. Deep beneath the crystalline spires of the capital city, in a bunker designed to withstand supernova High Arbiter, Vorkash watched his civilization crumble. The 7th Fleet has been consumed, a subordinate reported, voice cracking. The Devourers have adapted to our phase shield technology. Impossible, Vorkash whispered, his proud scales fading from vibrant blue to pale gray. The Zentari expression of despair. Our scientists calculated a 99.8% probability that the resonance modulation would. The bunker shuddered. Emergency lights flickered. On the monitors, the surface of Zentari Prime disappeared beneath a tide of writhing biological matter. "They're breaching the bunker," someone shouted. "The outer doors are being dissolved." Vorkash's primary heart faltered as the bunker's final door began to bubble and hiss, acid eating through supposedly indestructible alloys. This was the end. The greatest civilization in the galaxy reduced to. The room suddenly filled with swirling, luminescent gas. NIMBY. Here. Before anyone could react, the gas solidified around clusters of Zentari officials, forming protective transport spheres. The spheres rose, passing effortlessly through the ceiling, as if physical matter were merely a suggestion. Outside, across the dying Zentari homeworld, the battle had shifted impossibly. Devourer ground forces encountered barriers they couldn't penetrate, living walls of crystalline granite warriors forming shields where defense systems had failed. In orbit, a Zentari battle carrier commander watched in stunned silence as small, primitive-looking vessels executed maneuvers his tactical computers labeled suicidal, drawing Devourer ships into killing zones where Vex swarm fighters waited. These weren't Council ships. These were human designs. Impossible, he breathed, as the supposedly quarantined species coordinated a counterattack that his finest strategists couldn't have conceived. The NIMBY transport spheres deposited Vorkash and other high-ranking Zentari aboard the Alliance command carrier. The ship's design was unlike anything in Council records, asymmetrical, with seemingly random protrusions and energy signatures that fluctuated without pattern. Elena Reyes stood waiting, flanked by representatives of 5 other outcast species. Her expression revealed nothing as the Zentari arbiter struggled to comprehend his changed circumstances. "Welcome aboard the ESS Reckoning, Arbiter Vorkash," she said. "I trust the NIMBY extraction was smoothly executed." Vorkash's secondary eyes blinked rapidly. "Human, you coordinated this. With these," he gestured at the assembled outcasts. "The Alliance of Outcasts," Elena clarified. "Those the Council deemed too dangerous or unpredictable for membership. How fortunate we developed separately from your guidance." "We offer to end Earth's quarantine immediately," Vorkash said, dignity reasserting itself. "In exchange for—" "You misunderstand the situation," Elena interrupted coldly. "We're not here to negotiate terms with you. The Council's authority ended when you failed to protect your own worlds." She unfolded a document. Actual physical paper, a medium the Council had abandoned millennia ago as inefficient. "This is a formal surrender of Council authority to the Alliance for the duration of the Devourer conflict. Your signature acknowledges that the judgment against Earth and all outcast species was in error." Vorkash's scales darkened with anger. "This is outrageous. The Council will never—" "The Council is being consumed as we speak," the Vex Queen interjected, her mandibles clicking with something resembling amusement. "Your homeworld is lost. Your fleets shattered. Your defenses proven worthless." View screens around the chamber showed Alliance forces coordinating with an efficiency the Council had never achieved. Granite warriors providing impenetrable defense, NIMBY infiltrators extracting civilians, Kravak regenerators healing the wounded, Vex swarms executing precision strikes, and human vessels implementing tactics no logical mind would have conceived. "The choice is simple," Elena said, offering a writing implement. "Sign, acknowledging the Council's fatal error in judgment, or we leave the Devourers to finish consuming your empire while we protect our own territories." Vorkash stared at the human who had once stood before him as a supplicant. Now she held his civilization's survival in her hands. "What guarantee do we have that you will honor this agreement after the threat is neutralized?" he asked. Elena's smile was cold. None whatsoever. Exactly the kind of unpredictability your council found so objectionable in humans. With trembling hands, the Arbiter signed. The Alliance war room aboard S Tenacity hummed with activity as representatives from 6 species gathered around Dr. Chen's latest creation. At the center of the chamber floated a holographic projection of what appeared to be a virus, but unlike any conventional pathogen. Project Pandora, Chen explained, manipulating the display to reveal its complex molecular structure. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, but a countermeasure designed specifically for devourer biology. The Vex Queen's antennae twitched with interest. Explain. The devourers adapt to everything they encounter through consumption, Chen continued. Their primary strength. But what if they consume something designed to be consumed? He expanded the projection, revealing microscopic machines embedded within biological material. Trojan nanites wrapped in genetically engineered tissue. The outer layer appeals to devourer feeding patterns, triggering consumption. Once inside their biological network, the devourer's adaptive ability becomes their weakness, finished the NIMBY collective. Brilliant. Elena nodded approval. Deployment begins in 12 hours. Commander Frost, status of the front line. General Dakota Frost's weathered face appeared on a secondary display. His backdrop showed the interior of a forward command post where human officers coordinated with Vex drone mines. The Council's strategy relied on predictable, systematic responses. Frost reported, "We've implemented what they would call irrational tactics, sacrificing positions to gain greater advantage, using emotional provocation against hive-minded enemies." Tactical displays showed human-led battle groups deploying seemingly outdated kinetic weapons, railguns, and mass drivers, while Council forces continued using energy weapons that the Devourers had already adapted to counter. The granite shield walls have proven impenetrable, Frost continued. The Devourers can't consume their crystalline structure. Meanwhile, NIMBY infiltrators are gathering intelligence from deep within Devourer territory, giving us unprecedented visibility into their movements. And the Council forces? Elena asked. Cooperating, though reluctantly. Their commanders keep attempting to implement standard doctrine until they see it fail. Then they follow our lead. On the primary battlefield display, human special forces teams coordinated with Vex swarms in what Alliance tacticians had designated chaos pattern attacks, assaults with no discernible logic that achieved devastating precision precisely because they couldn't be predicted. A captured Devourer communication appeared on screen, a rare transmission from one of their sentient command nodes. Human tactics have no pattern. They sacrifice without calculation. Behavior does not conform to survival optimization algorithms. They can't understand us, Frost observed with grim satisfaction. And they can't adapt to what they don't understand. Elena turned to a Council observer, a Centauri military attaché assigned to monitor Alliance operations. Your assessment, Commander Thrix. The Centauri, the same diplomat who had secretly aided Elena a decade ago, studied the battle data. I informed my superiors years ago that human unpredictability represented a potential asset, not a liability. They demoted me for the suggestion. His scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. Your Alliance implements strategies our doctrine would never permit. You sacrifice short-term advantages for long-term gains. You deploy forces based on intuition rather than calculation. You use emotion as a tactical tool. He paused. It is discomforting to witness, yet undeniably effective. An alert chimed. All eyes turned to the main display as Project Pandora's deployment team reported readiness. The Devourer's main neural cluster has been located, announced Kravak Commander Grax. Their queen resides in a massive biostructure at these coordinates. Elena studied the information, then addressed the assembled Alliance leaders. Convention says attacking the queen directly is suicide. Their defenses will be strongest there. Which is precisely why we will succeed, finished the Granite Elder Bortak. They calculate based on self-preservation. They cannot comprehend willful sacrifice. "Prepare strike teams," Alina ordered. "I'll lead the infiltration personally." The council attache's scales paled. "That violates every protocol for command hierarchy preservation." "Exactly," Alina replied with a cold smile. "Operation Evolutionary Flaw begins now." The ESS Tenacity hung in the void of deep space, its hull scarred from countless engagements. Ahead loomed the Devourer Brood Nexus, a massive organic structure that defied conventional description. Part ship, part living organism, it pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that shifted hypnotically. Alina stood in the ready room with her infiltration team, a carefully selected force representing each Alliance species. Lieutenant Sora Chen, Dr. Chen's daughter and former Luna defense specialist. Kirtak, a granite warrior whose crystalline form had been specially modified to resist devourer enzymes. Mist within darkness, a NIMBY scout capable of infiltrating the smallest openings. Vextra, a specialized Vex drone mind controlling 3 combat bodies simultaneously. Grax Tor, a Kruvak regenerator whose tissue could heal both himself and others. And Sim, a Meridian symbiote who could adapt to changing environmental conditions. Conventional logic says this mission is suicide. Alina addressed them, her combat armor bearing the scars of previous battles. That's why it will work. On the main bridge, the Council observer Thrix watched in disbelief as the Tenacity deliberately allowed itself to be partially consumed by a Devourer scout ship. "This is madness," he protested to Captain Rivera. "You're sacrificing your vessel." "Only the outer hull sections," Rivera replied calmly. "Specifically designed to carry Dr. Chen's Pandora organisms. Now they're being introduced directly into the Devourer biological network." Across the view screen, the Devourer vessel that had attached itself to the Tenacity began to convulse, its surface bulging irregularly as the Pandora countermeasures activated. "Infiltration team, deploy," Rivera ordered. Within the confusion of the Devourer ship's distress, a small stealth craft detached from the Tenacity's ventral bay, slipping toward the massive Brood Nexus. The interior of the Nexus defied rational architecture. Organic corridors shifted and flowed, walls pulsing with neural activity. Alina's team moved through the living labyrinth, each member utilizing their unique abilities to overcome obstacles. Kirtak absorbed a spray of corrosive enzymes that would have dissolved standard armor. Mist within darkness scouted ahead through ventilation systems too small for conventional detection. Vextra's neural network processed sensory data faster than any individual mind could manage. Grax Tor's regenerative touch kept the team functional despite mounting injuries. Sem's adaptive biology allowed breathing despite the increasingly toxic atmosphere. "We've lost contact with the Tenacity," Lieutenant Chen reported as they reached a chamber filled with pulsing neural ganglia. "Comms are being blocked." Alina checked the Pandora delivery system, a modified nanite injector designed by Dr. Chen. "Doesn't matter. We proceed as planned." They fought through 3 more defensive chambers, losing Vextra's primary body and watching Kirtak's crystalline form crack under sustained attack. When they finally reached the central chamber, only 4 remained functional. The Devourer Queen filled the massive space, a writhing mass of neural tissue and sensory organs that dwarfed them. Thousands of tendrils extended throughout the Nexus, connecting the Queen to every Devourer in her brood. "You are flawed," came a telepathic voice that pierced their minds with painful intensity. "Your species should have been eliminated by evolution." Alina felt the Queen probing her consciousness, searching for weaknesses, trying to understand the incomprehensible human decision to launch this suicidal mission. "Your unpredictability is merely a defect," the Queen continued, "a failure to optimize for survival." Alina pushed forward despite the telepathic assault, the Pandora device clutched in her bleeding hand. "That's where you're wrong," she replied, fighting toward the central neural cluster. "Evolution favors the adaptable, not the perfect." With a final surge of effort, Alina plunged the device directly into the Queen's primary ganglia. The Pandora payload released, its nanites turning the Devourer's adaptive ability against itself. triggering cascading, uncontrollable mutations. The Queen's telepathic scream resonated through the minds of every team member as the neural network began to collapse. Back to the extraction point, Elena ordered, her vision blurring from the mental assault. Mission accomplished. As the Nexus began to convulse around them, Elena knew not all would escape. The price of victory would be high, but survival had never been guaranteed. Only evolution. 1 year after the Queen's defeat, Earth hosted the inaugural assembly of the Galactic Federation. The new chamber, built in the crater where the old United Nations once stood, bore little resemblance to the sterile perfection of the former Council Hall. Its architecture incorporated elements from all Alliance species: granite crystalline supports, NIMBY atmospheric integration, VEX acoustic optimization, Kravac regenerative materials, Meridian adaptive systems, and human artistic flourishes that many former council members found inexplicably moving. Elena entered wearing formal diplomatic attire that couldn't quite hide the scars of battle. Her left arm, lost during the escape from the collapsing Nexus, had been replaced with a prosthetic of granite human design. Lieutenant Chen walked beside her, now Earth's ambassador to the Federation. "They're all here," Chen whispered, gesturing to the assembled delegates. Every species. Indeed, the chamber represented a galaxy transformed. Former council representatives sat alongside the once outcasts. Vex drones communicated with Zentari scientists. NIMBY collectives flowed freely near Meridian symbiotes. Granite warriors stood guard beside Kravac healers. The chaos would have horrified the old council, with its rigid protocols and hierarchies. Here, 100 different biochemistries, psychologies, and evolutionary paths converged in productive disorder. Elena took her position at the speaker's podium. The clamor subsided gradually, another departure from the immediate silence that the old arbiter would have commanded. 1 year ago, she began, her voice carrying through the chamber. The galaxy faced extinction at the hands of an enemy that fed on predictability. The former council's carefully ordered society, their logical responses, their methodical defenses, all became weaknesses against an adaptive foe. Holoprojections displayed key moments from the conflict, Alliance forces implementing seemingly irrational strategies that confounded the Devourers, outcast species contributing abilities the Council had deemed too dangerous to include in their society. "The universe doesn't reward perfection," Elena continued. "It rewards those who can change, who can embrace the unexpected." The Council's fatal error wasn't just rejecting Earth, it was rejecting evolution itself. She gestured to the assembled delegates. "This Federation will not demand conformity. It will not judge a species by whether they follow expected patterns. Our diversity of thought, of approach, of biology. These are our greatest strengths." The new charter appeared on displays throughout the chamber. A document forged through months of negotiation, establishing a governing body where former council species would serve alongside former outcasts, where decision-making incorporated multiple perspectives rather than enforcing a single standard of correct behavior. As the session adjourned for the traditional reception, former arbiter Vorkash approached Elena. Age and stress had dulled his once vibrant scales, the last year's events weighing heavily on the representative of a diminished power. "I have a question that has troubled me," he said quietly. "Would humanity have let the Council perish if we hadn't surrendered authority? Would you have watched our worlds fall?" Elena studied the stars visible through the chamber's transparent ceiling, the same stars that had witnessed humanity's judgment and eventual vindication. "You called our unpredictability a flaw," she replied. "So you'll never know the answer to that question with certainty." Her smile held both warmth and something else, the edge that had carried her species through countless evolutionary challenges. "And neither will we, until such a moment arrives." She took a sip from her glass. That uncertainty, that capacity to surprise even ourselves, that's humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. In orbit above, vessels from 100 worlds patrolled alongside Earth ships, their designs incorporating elements of human flawed innovation. Together they faced the darkness between stars, ready for whatever unknown threats might emerge next. Not perfect, but adaptable, and an evolution's unforgiving calculus that made all the difference.